Hey everyone, this is Erica Lucas, your host and founding member of VEST, an organization connecting women across industries, regions, and career levels so that together we can expedite the pipeline of more women in positions of power and influence. Welcome to another episode of the Vester podcast, where we explore the invisible barriers holding women back in the workplace and share stories of women building power collectively.
My role as CEO, and I have it written, I carry around this day planner, and it says, my job is to develop others. And I remind myself of that. I think collectively, we worked better when we are together instead of divided, because we have that united front that often is intimidating to men or others in leadership roles. And so why don't we? Why would we tear each other down instead of working together and building each other up, even if we're in different sectors?
70% of healthcare workers are women, including 90% of nurses and 93% of midwives. Yet, only 25% of healthcare leadership roles are held by women. Why is that? In this episode, we talked to Robin Sunday Allen, Chief Executive Officer of the Oklahoma City Indian Health Clinic, about how the lack of women in leadership positions affect women's health and overall policy. We also discussed Native American relations in Oklahoma and why it's important for women to continue to speak up despite the risk of being penalized for doing so. This recording was part of a more intimate coaching session with VEST members and has been repurposed to accommodate this episode. There's a lot of tension right now, right, when it comes to public health or healthcare, given the pandemic, efforts to try to keep everyone safe and healthy. What would you say is the most pressing thing you're dealing with right now?
Two things come to mind. It's never a good time to have a pandemic, but I mean, those of us that are in public health, we knew one was on the horizon. It was that time. It was very unfortunate that it happened during an election year. So public health became politicized and still is. And so what has occurred is this mesh between politics and public health. And it's never a good thing, but it's what's happened. And so dealing with that and still trying to keep the community well and doing our part to remind people that we are still in a pandemic, that it's not gone away. No matter what they're reading, who they're listening to, COVID is real. It kills people. We see it on a daily basis. Here we are 20 months in. The clinic's been under a pandemic plan since March 9th of 2020. And here we are. And we did not expect it to last this long, but I blame politics on that. It's so unfortunate that politics has played a part in where we are today. So that's what keeps me up at night. And secondly is the 300 staff that I get to lead. And just the pandemic is real. Like I said, we're still operating under a pandemic plan. We are not 100% of our staff back on site, just because I have a culture of safety here and want to make sure that we are bringing people on in the right way. So just when I talk about the care and the fostering of our staff, I mean, thinking about them in the middle of winter and in the middle of summer, and they are donning N95s, they're gloved, they're masked, they're shielded. I mean, and still when they're out working what we call COVID corner, where we have box cars set up for drive-in purposes to keep our COVID symptomatic patients outside while we screen them and test them. that's hard. I mean, and then they have to go home and worry about exposing their loved ones and those they come in contact with. While we feel like this is a very safe place to be, thankfully, throughout these 20 months that we've been on this pandemic plan, we've only had 3 workplace exposures. And for healthcare, that's tremendous. So we know that we operate kind of like on an island here while we're here, but you can't ask or you can't control people once they leave here at 5 o'clock, and you don't know what they're doing and then coming back in. And so that's the world that we live in. But again, it's kind of all over the place just because we can do so much in public health, but then depending on what people are reading or listening to, and it's sometimes counterintuitive to everything that we are doing. And because we are a Native population, we are already, I guess, just lack of a better word, suspect of the government and what they have always tried to eradicate us and still are today. So we have a lot of vaccine hesitancy and reluctance in our population. So we have to overcome that as well. So that is real. That's just, like I said, when you think of things that keep you up at night, that's what keeps me up at night.
Robin, 70% of healthcare workers are women, including 90% of nurses and 93% of midwives, yet only 25% of healthcare leadership roles are women, like yourself. Why is that? And how do we put more women in positions of leadership? And how do we keep them there?
I think there's several things that come to mind. One, I think that in healthcare, as well as in many other organizations and industries, boards are male dominant. And a lot of times the board members are those ones that are picking the leaders of the organizations, those C-suites. So there's one. So my challenge to all of you is, I know that you all have a lot on your plate, but if at all possible, when asked to serve on boards, especially those in nonprofit, or any board that you can make a difference, please join, because boards need females and they need strong female figures. So I think that is the place that we all should have a seat. So I think that's one. I think that collectively we kind of gravitate towards people that look like us and think like us and are us. And so a lot of times that's in Oklahoma, older white men. And so healthcare is no different. And so I think that has kept a lot of women out. Also, organizations don't always have developmental programs or mentorship programs that allow women to work them way up the ladder. And so that too has held us back. In healthcare, in particular, I think women are behind the 8 ball already, because historically, out of history and habit, we have been those nurses, kind of that bedside support system, if you will, over the male doctor, or maybe the business office manager, or even if you see women in healthcare, a lot of times they're in an HR role. So out of history and habit, we're trying to gain ground and starting to get there, but a long way to go. So those are kind of thoughts off the top of my head. And sometimes even the way that position descriptions are written may deter women. If women will see something that might say travel is required. Well, if you have young children at home, or you're a single mom, you may not have that support system, or all of the above, that may deter you from going after that C-suite level, thinking, well, I almost abandoning my family. But then once you sit down and you start learning about that job, that might be once a year, twice a year, but in the job description, it says travel required. Finally, we just don't tout ourselves. We don't tout ourselves the way that men do. And so when I mentor young women, I remind them that when it's time for their evaluation or it's time to ask for a raise, do it, because nobody else is going to do it for you. So I can assure you, when it's time for my evaluation in January, my board's going to hear every single good thing that this clinic does. And I understand that I'm supported by 299 very skilled, passionate people. But at the end of the day, I'm the bus driver and they're riding along on the bus with me. And so don't be afraid to shout from the rooftop that you are skilled. Don't be overlooked just because you kept quiet. So I think that those are all kind of reasons that we're still struggling to get to that C-suite.
Because there's so few of us at the top, when we do speak out or we want to speak out, we sometimes are penalized for it, right? Allegedly, here in Oklahoma, we had 2 women doctors at the Oklahoma Health Authority, right? And allegedly, they said something or they disagree with something that was said within our existing administration, and then they were removed from that board. Again, I don't know. I wasn't in that board. I wasn't in those meetings. I don't know what happened, but that's not the only example that we've seen where sometimes when women do stand up for what they believe in or when they set boundaries, they're often penalized for it. What can we do there? Or perhaps what is the incentive for women to continue to speak up if there's going to be that type of retribution? And what's the alternative if we don't speak up?
I think we see the alternative. We see what's going on in Texas with kind of those rogue anti-women policies and laws that get passed when we set back or if we don't speak up. I'm proud of those 2 women for standing their ground. I mean, so be it. If they lost that seat, somebody heard them. I mean, and so they heard them so loud and clear that they were intimidated by it and they removed them. But at the end of the day, they were heard. And so we have to continue to be heard. I'm a strong advocate for voting and knowing those candidates. I am involved with my own political party in Edmond, and strongly support women candidates. And, if we're not going to run for office, we can certainly support women. And there are men also out there that understand the value of women and our bodies and who we are. And so I don't want to come across as anti-male candidate or anything like that. But at the end of the day, 23rd and Lincoln needs to look like Oklahoma and the community at large. And I can assure you it does not. I don't spend a great deal of time at 23rd and Lincoln, thankfully, but I do spend a great deal of time in DC because we, the Oklahoma City Indian Clinic, do not receive state dollars, so we receive federal dollars. So I, pre-pandemic, probably in DC at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, reminding Congress that they have trust and treaty obligations to natives and that they can't forget about us when they're building those appropriation bills and making policies that are going to directly affect Indian health. But the same can be said there as it is in the state level. We have a voice, and you do not know how many times that I do talk to legislators and they'll say, I don't hear anything from my constituents, or I never get a phone call, or I never get a letter, or I never get an email. Or sometimes someone will say, you know what, I did hear something from someone, and it was that one call or that one voice. So even if you're not ready to run for office, or that might not be a thing for you, stay grounded in the politics around you that are going to directly affect you. When you get door hangers on the mail or those annoying calls that always seem to come up at dinner time, or when you're trying to interact with your family, ask those tough questions. Whatever is important to you, ask those people how they stand on it. I mean, a lot of times they'll have town hall meetings, call them to the carpet on it. They work for you, they work for us. And so we can't forget about that. And so my thing is, the two ladies that were removed, good for them. Good for them in the fact that they made someone uncomfortable enough that they were heard.
I love that so much, because I think for a lot of us that do speak up, we are often labeled, we are often, I was speaking at an earlier event in the week, and at that time we were celebrating the accomplishments of strong women and stuff. But I reminded ourselves, for every praise that we get, we're often criticized 5 times more if you do stand up. And so I think you have to ground yourself, and you can't be moved by either praise or criticism because both come and go. But I think you do have to be grounded in the things that you value and the things that you stand for. And once you do that, positions come and go, opportunities come and go, but you stay true to yourself and what you believe in. So I love that. Thank you, Robin. Tensions within the state of Oklahoma with our tribal community and our governor and administration are tense, to say the least. How does that affect your role? Or once again, I mean, even though you don't get funding from the state, it still influences a lot, right, of how we show up in the community. How is that affecting you?
It is certainly something that's top of mind, being a Native woman in leadership role in Oklahoma. When you look at the front page or the headlines, or the top of the newscast is something about the governor and the tribes. I am a tribal member. I am a citizen again of the Cherokee Nation. So it goes back to ignorance. I don't know how else to say it, about tribal sovereignty. I don't think that this administration understands what tribal sovereignty means, and it's the inherent right of tribes to govern themselves. So there are 39 tribes in the state of Oklahoma. That basically means there are 39 little nations within the boundaries of Oklahoma, and each one of them has their own leader, their Congress, their systems to operate, and they have compacts and contracts with the state of Oklahoma that the state is to honor, as well as the tribes. And that is all part of tribal sovereignty. And I just don't think that, for whatever reason, there's that lack of respect or just lack of knowledge about tribes and the impact that tribes have on the state of Oklahoma. I know on the healthcare side, who wants to absorb, which healthcare system in the state, in this metro area, wants to absorb 21,000 Native patients? That's how many we take care of at the Oklahoma City Indian Clinic. We take care of 21,000 Indian people. And if you know anything about Native health, Native people are sick, and they have all of these comorbidities that the other populations might not have, and they have just a lot more illness and sickness. And I'm talking about physical health, mental health, addiction, behavioral health. Who wants to absorb us? We're 21,000 here, but can you imagine with all the other tribes and the tribal programs that are in the state of Oklahoma? So I know the burden that we take off of the state And if you think about some of those roads and bridges, do you really think the highway between here and Texas would be that nice once you get into Chickasaw Nation territory? If it weren't for Chickasaw Nation, no, the roads would be horrible like they are here in the metro area. You get up in my part of the state, I still call my mom's house home. I've been gone since 17, I'm 51. But anyway, when I go home to my mom's, the roads, bridges are fabulous there. Because Cherokee Nation has invested in that infrastructure. My niece, who is in Pryor Public Schools, they are well funded because Cherokee Nation funds the school system there and in the 14 counties there in our jurisdiction. What would happen to the state of Oklahoma if the tribes were to pull back those compacts or contracts and not have that partnership with the state? I truly believe this state would already been bankrupt if it weren't for the tribes bailing out the state of Oklahoma. So with that being said, I continue as a Native woman to show up and show out and continue to educate about the importance of tribes and tribal sovereignty and why we exist. And here we are still today.
Tell us about you being a tribal woman. And I mean, because even with tribes, there's a gender imbalance, right? When it comes to women in positions of power and influence. Tell us what it's been like for you to be in the C-suite within tribal government, tribal communities, and what have been your biggest challenges within that role?
Well, yes, tribal governments and just Indian
industry
business in general, yes, has been male dominated and heavy at the top, very much like we talked about with just other industries. I was almost overlooked for my job. Even after being here and proving myself as the chief operating officer before I was promoted to CEO, because I was a young woman. So when I took over as the when I was the COO, I was 30. And when I became acting CEO, I was 38. And so it got back to me that when I was being vetted for this job, that there was concern that I had a young son at home at the time. Eli was 4 or 5. And would I be able to do that and work and run this clinic and grow this clinic and fulfill all the job duties? And that was never directly asked of me. It was kind of the talk around me. But of course, you know, Indian world is small. And so I found out what the question was. So I just called a spade. And when I was in my interview and talked about the job and just said, look, I know this is a concern. Well, let me tell you, I've been doing the job. And so just basically, again, made sure that I had a voice and I was listened to. And so there's that. And once I got the job, and, you know, there's at the time being 38, 39 years old, you know, I was the youngest in the room a lot of times, and sometimes one of only a handful of women. And sometimes that still is the case. But it doesn't take long for male leaders to understand the passion that someone has, the leadership qualities. You just have to stay present and not back down. And kind of that old cliche, never let them see you sweat kind of thing. I mean, while we do, we have to just, I think we have to work harder than men a lot of times to not come across as weak, and because we're not. But that's the perception a lot of times. And my tribe, thank God, is very matrilineal. And so we come from strong Indian Cherokee women Cherokee women run things in their house, and men are used to taking a back seat. But when I moved to this area, Western tribes are not that way. So that was different for me too, as to learning that, oh, not all the tribes are set up the way that mine is. And so that was a learning experience. But just over time, once you kind of become an expert in your field, what are they going to say?
Because there have been so few of us, we often think we have to compete with one another, or we end up, we get to the top and then we say, well, I had to endure this, and now everybody else has to endure this, as opposed to like, no, it's time to pay it forward and make it easier for other women to get to the C-suite or to advance economically. It doesn't have to be in the C-suite. Have you experienced any kind of competitive nature with other women, or perhaps maybe have you been disappointed when other women haven't done it, or, like have this attitude of like, I had to deal with it, so now everybody else has to. And if so, what would you say to them, or how would you coach us to maybe change the narrative and change the culture amongst ourselves so that it doesn't happen, moving forward?
Oh man, that is, it's unfortunate. I don't understand that way of thinking at all. I feel like anytime that you can offer someone else wisdom, or even any kind of role of mentorship, I really truly believe my role as CEO, and I have it written, I carry around this day planner, and it says my job is to develop others. And I remind myself of that, and not just in my realm here at the clinic, but anybody that I had the fortunate, I was very fortunate the last few years to be involved with Leadership Oklahoma, Youth Leadership Oklahoma City. So I co-chaired their leadership program for the last 2 years and got to interact with juniors and seniors at the high school level. And boy, did that get me out of my comfort zone. But nonetheless, I still have these young women, mostly of color, they kind of gravitated toward me, that I still mentor. Some of them are now sophomores in college, and I have some that were juniors last year, that are seniors in high school, and some that were freshmen, because I shadowed for 1 year. But with that being said, is I don't understand that mentality. I think collectively we worked better when we are together, instead of divided, because we have that united front that often is intimidating to men or others in leadership roles. And so why don't we? Why would we tear each other down instead of working together and building each other up? Even if we're in different sectors, do we still have a place at the table just out of years of service or just life wisdom, that if someone younger in their career needs that mentorship, please offer it to them. And even if you are already in the C-suite, surround yourself with those people that are going to make you better as well. And so that's how I think that we change. We have spent a lot of time talking about why women are in these positions. Well, I really truly believe that we could be, if we women, C-suite women, or whatever leadership role we're in, worked to foster that next generation to make it easier and better for them. We're never going to make the headway that we want to. Like we started off this conversation with those staggering statistics about the number of women that aren't in leadership roles that should be or could be. How are we going to get there if we don't pave the way for the next generation and make it easier without having that mentality of, well, I had to struggle to get here? We shouldn't want anyone else to struggle. We should want better for them.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Constance.
So one of our members just wrote an article on vulnerability,
Mhm.
and we talk a lot about being vulnerable, but at the same time, the words you say and the words we say every day, don't let them see you sweat, you know? So the struggle between being vulnerable, whether it's being vulnerable with your peers or your subordinates or, the leadership that's above you, but at the same time, not letting them see you sweat. I found that is a challenge. Do you have any advice on that or any examples you can provide where you've worked through that?
Yes. And I forge through that every day. And that's a great question. So I don't want you to come across thinking that, I'm this strong woman who doesn't have these emotions or don't feel like crying a lot of times. I will tell you exactly what I do. Thankfully, I have a private office. There are times I will come in here and I will shut the door and I will call my mom or, a trusted confidant, and I will just let it out. But again, it's that don't let them see you sweat. No one sees that. It's that trusted person that I have. And oftentimes, again, it's my mom that gets to see that or gets to hear that. And so for you, if you don't have that mom but you have each other, there is someone that you can sweat it out with, can talk it out with, can cry it out with, and they're not going to judge you for that. But we need that because we are women, we are expressive, we are emotional. So what? So be it. But that again, I think there's a time and a place for it. My board's not going to see it no matter what. I'm just not going to go into the boardroom. And as much as I sometimes may want to, they're not going to see that side of me, but I might afterwards. But again, it's that balance. But yeah, I do it all the time. I mean, I talk to my mother probably 4 out of 5 days that I leave the office just so that I can get it off. I can just have to let it out because she's my person and she's not going to judge me, and she's going to just kind of be that support system for me and just listen. And so I'm so thankful that you as a group have each other to do that with, your trusted confidants, because even if you don't have friends or family that you can do that with, you have other professionals that probably have been in a similar situation that will lend their voice to you or just an ear. Sometimes sometimes people don't want you to respond at all. They just want you to listen. And so just have to think about that as well. But Constance, I struggle all the time. And I think that if someone told you that they didn't, it's a lie. And even and men as well. I mean, why do you think they hang out on Friday afternoons at the golf course?
So Robin, you had mentioned earlier the importance of serving on boards. I'm really interested in trying to do that. What recommendations do you have for someone who has never served on a board? How do you find those opportunities? And then once you have the opportunity, what do you do next?
Okay. What I would recommend is the United Way has something called Board Serve. And they, if you go to their website and you can look at it, what they will do is take you through a mentoring program to mentor you to become a good board member. And then because there are so many nonprofits that are United Way funded, that they will match you with an organization that maybe has some of the same mission, vision, core values that you have and that you identify through this program. So I would recommend that you start there with United Way Board Serve and get your foot in the door there. They'll match you with some boards. And once you start getting out there, once you start serving on one board, you'll be amazed at kind of the domino effect of your name being out there, and that others will say, oh, I think you would serve a purpose here. So start there.
As women, why is it so hard to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes when other women share their stories of oppression? Why is it so hard for us to just listen to each other before having an opinion? And again, it gets back to everything that we were saying, right? Like, why can we just, even if we disagree, support one another and understand one another? I think that's in Oklahoma, for example, again, regardless of where you stand on this issue. I feel like Anna Wake, you mentioned earlier, we're underfunding education, we're underfunding just about anything, right, in the state of Oklahoma. Yet we put like 20, and instead of addressing that, which in my opinion, it's a hell of a lot more important, right, we do another abortion bill, as if we need more here in our state, because we're already like, overwhelmed with all of this laws and bills that prohibit women from making decisions on their own. What do we do about that? How, and I open this up to anyone, Robin, you, but also any other VEST member that wants to chime in.
Again, it goes back to knowing who you're putting in office. And while I know that we are in a very, very conservative red state, not everybody is probably as red as some of the others. So what I and I don't have an answer, I mean, for all of this, but one of the things that gets me is we spend so much time at 23rd and Lincoln trying to reverse laws that are the law of the land, and abortion being one of them, when we have so many other things going on that, we need to be addressing. Leave it alone already. I mean, we know what's going to happen if we outlaw abortions. Women are going to have abortions anyway, and they are going to be unsafe, and people and babies are going to die in very traumatic ways. It is inhumane. It is against everything I stand for as a public health expert. And for policymakers to dictate decisions of women, I could go on and on all day. But yet, no one is looking at policies mandating that they get their prostate checked once a year after age 50, or that they go and have, health risk assessments on themselves. I mean, it's always slanted towards women. Mm-hmm. And that is very bothersome to me. Again, I don't have answers other than, I think Anna Watt put in the chat, we can vote people out. Yeah. So people that don't support the rights of women and being in charge of our own bodies and making decisions that are best for us, whatever that may be, even if I choose to be pro-life, well, that's my decision, but I get to make that. I don't have to have someone else make that decision for me. I get to choose that. If I choose, I get to choose to have a mammogram. I get to choose to have a colonoscopy. I get to choose to have a pap smear. Why don't I get to choose how I either carry a pregnancy to term or not? So I don't have answers. So really, I mean, I think that this is a good question and topic, kind of as a roundtable here. If others can kind of weigh in and help me maybe articulate myself better and my where we all are with this. But it's in my opinion, it's a dangerous path to go down. Here we are in the 21st century. And reverting back to laws that have been in place for over 50 years. And we saw what happened before Roe v. Wade. And here we are.
To your first question, Erica, like the first part of that question about women not having such a hard time to understand, I have struggled really since the 2016 election as a white woman that there are too many white women who have either perceived themselves to have more power by aligning with white men or have decided that's the way that they're going to go about it. And it is increasingly troubling to me because I see it every day. And I'm like, to what end? And, you know, a few times when I feel like I've tried to like stand out separate from that, it makes it more challenging. So I see why it happens. I mean, it can be an effective way. So you really have to make a decision that that's not the way that I'm going to move in the world. And that's why I think this group has been very helpful for me as far as knowing that there are like-minded people who want to move around in positions of power in a way that I would consider a more, you know, feminine way, as far as like just owning who we are and getting power through our expertise, not by our relationships with men in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I thank you, Amy, for adding that. You know, I always say I will support women till I die, unless those women are passing laws or that keep other women out, you know, because sometimes we are. I mean, I think you said it, Amy. I think, you know, often we get into those positions of power, and because it took us so long to get there, or we had to do whatever, now we have to do whatever it takes to stay in those positions, even if it means stepping on other women. And I just don't think it doesn't scale. It might work for one, you know, for two, for the 6% of women CEOs at S&P 500, you know, for the 3% of women in venture capital, but it hasn't scaled. So I do think that we should acknowledge that, talk to each other, listen to our stories, believe one another, support one another, coach one another, and then bring one another along. So thank you for sharing that, Amy. Anna Wake, you mentioned something. I don't know the Hyde Amendment. And then I also don't know about the 10 million that we would have to relegate with the McGirt.
So I thought your question, hi Robin, sorry, we haven't met in person yet. I'm Anna Wake. I thought your question was going to be more about the legislation. And so I would think that Robin probably couldn't answer that question without talking about the Hyde Amendment, which most people don't know about, but it's something that Native clinics are always falling under, right? That no federal dollars can be used for an abortion. And so the question, they use Indian hospitals and clinics as a ping pong ball oftentimes around this, but we have a prohibition across the board to not be able to use any federal dollars. And so there's really no reason to talk about it. It's what's constantly used. And one of the reasons why, you know, defunding Planned Parenthood was never necessary, because there is a prohibition ever against using federal dollars for abortions. It's called the Hyde Amendment. And the $10 million, it's part of the budget to relitigate McGirt, the governor set aside, right? So it's constantly, and I actually would disagree. I think they know Indian law really well. I think they have a lot of people that know Indian law and what sovereignty is really, really well. And that's why we keep seeing cases like the Burkeen case in Texas, right, trying to overturn ICWA, because they can, which is the Indian Child Welfare Act, right? I think they know it incredibly well, sometimes better than we do, or our attorneys do. And they're using it to try to take away from us. So they play stupid and might say really, really stupid things, right? But I think they do that in a context of oftentimes deep knowledge.
Maybe I'm giving them too much credit, and I appreciate you. I do. I appreciate that thought, because, you know, thinking about it, what you just said, you're probably absolutely right. Unfortunately, that they are experts on Indian law and why they use it, I guess, against us. And yeah, I see that perspective of playing stupid, but boy, they play the part well.
If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review and subscribe to our podcast for future episodes. You can also join the conversation by becoming a VEST member. Go to www.vester.co and apply today.